And we will get going. Share screen. Okay. Cool. All right. So like you saw when registering, today's topic is all about widgets. So widgets are by far, if you've used Palladio for a while, some people get it, some people don't. And I'm hoping with this video to kind of make it clear what widgets are useful for, why you should seriously consider using them with your Palladio workflow if you're not already, and just kind of highlight some of the common issues I think that I've seen people make as they've used widgets with their Palladio templates. So the first thing to cover, I think, is simply what is a widget. So a widget, there's no native ConvertKit feature called a widget. They do have a thing now called layouts, which I'm gonna mute everyone. I'm sorry. If everyone could just mute yourself, just to eliminate the feedback. Cool. So there's no native functionality in ConvertKit for widgets. Widgets are a completely artificial construct. But what widgets are, which I'll talk about more in a second, are compiled mini templates that get put within a content snippet. So content snippets is a first-class feature of ConvertKit. It was really meant to be able to stick like rich text information, like, I don't know, hey, we have a sale coming up or something that you could then, include in your different emails, like sequence emails or whatever. But widgets, the way that Palladio has created these widgets is it allows you to have dynamic content snippets where at the point of adding a snippet or a widget to an email, you can actually pass in information to it. That information can get processed and displayed in a certain way. And then the final product will get put into the email that included that widget. So in terms of what a widget is, the first thing to note is that a widget has structure. So a widget could be just simply text, but for the most part, what people are using widgets for are dynamic blocks of information that they add and weave within their emails. So this could be a reader question like you see on screen. It could be a testimonial, the highlight effect that many of you have seen or use, that's a widget. So a widget has defined structure. It has colors, border widths, font styles, all that kind of stuff, like the usual things you would expect to have in a template. But a widget also is or can be dynamic. So in the reader question widget, which again you see on screen, there are 3 bits of dynamic information that make that widget come to life. And that is the photo of the person who said the quote or said the question, the headline of their question, and then the actual question itself. So what ends up happening is when you use a widget, like in this case, the question widget in an email, you're going to say, hey, the photo is this, the headline is that, and the content's this, and that's going to be placed within the structure that you've set up for your widget. So again, if you think of a widget as a mini template, just like an email template has usually 1 bit of dynamic data, and that is where the actual, like when you go into ConvertKit's email editor and write stuff, that gets placed within the dynamic part of the template, namely the email content area. So a widget is this kind of the same thing, except you can really have as many dynamic areas as you want. And why this is really important is it allows you to have consistent structure. So if you think about something like a testimonial usually is going to have big text that is probably always the certain font face, always the same size, always italic or something. Maybe it's always centered. And then under it, you have a circular image of the person who gave the quote or gave the testimonial. Maybe you have like a little pink border around it that's a few pixels wide. Maybe you even have a drop shadow on that too. And then you have the name of the person. So that's all structural stuff that should stay the same. There should always be a pink border. There should always be that centered text. But the quote obviously is going to change depending on what testimonial you're showing. So that's really what I'm getting at with this interplay between structure and dynamic content. So structural elements with dynamic content. And that is really at the heart of understanding how widgets work. So a widget, like I just kind of referenced, is reusable. So you can have your reader question here that in this case, I left the content to be the same, but you can see that the headline, this is question number 1, or this is question number 2, along with the image, they're changing. So this is an example of putting it into an email and having the same structure, but with different dynamic content used again and again. So for example, to go back to the testimonial example, if you're doing a big sales email and you want to include like 10 testimonials in one email, you can use the same widget, the same testimonial widget. And then each time you include it in that email, so 10 times, you would say, here's the picture, here's the name, here's their quote. So just allows you to have a really clean look, just like if you're building a web page. If you're building a web page and you have a list of testimonials, each testimonial is going to have the same look and feel, but the content will be different. If anyone has any questions as I move through this, please just shout out. I don't have my chat open in front of me, so you'll need to let me know if you want me to dive deeper into anything. But so far, is this all making sense in terms of like the structural versus dynamic kind of interplay? Cool. All right. Excellent. Glad to hear that. Cool. A widget is also global. So this is really interesting because the whole point of content snippets is, if you remember when ConvertKit launched these, was to make it so you can have a bit of content that is everywhere. But again, this was meant to be textual content, maybe an image, but really just plain text type stuff. But what's really interesting, since we're using the content snippet system, is that widgets are really useful for things like, let's say you want to have a signature that, as you see on my screen now, is being used in 2 totally different email templates. But I want to make it so anytime I change my signature, maybe I drop the book a call link or something, I want to make it so that I just update one thing. And then all these underlying emails that use it, all the email templates that use that signature automatically get updated. So that's one of the really kind of the long tail benefits, if you will, of a widget, is that when you decide, oh, I'm going to redesign how my testimonials look, or I'm going to redesign how my reader questions look, you basically make the change once in Palladio, update your content snippet in ConvertKit with the code Palladio gives you. And then any sequence emails you have, any scheduled broadcast email you have, they'll all get updated. Now, obviously, any sent emails won't get updated, but there's nothing we can do about that. So I'm going to move into kind of the whys and the whens of using widgets. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, my Palladio account, and show you how I'm using widgets myself. So I really like widgets for really just three use cases. And I'm going to talk at the end of this about some things you shouldn't do with widgets. So the first one is to embed statically in templates for shared content. So for instance, I have in my email template, let me pull this up. I have at the bottom of it, I have my signature here. And then I have this recommendation kind of widget. These are widgets because these are things that I'm using in multiple places. I'm using this in 2 different email templates for now. But if I ever create more email templates, I'll probably want to repurpose the same thing. So if you plan on having something in multiple email templates, now these widgets are included in the email template. So I don't need to, when I'm setting up an email, I don't need to include these widgets. They're automatically kind of tied to the email template. So yeah, I mean, I like it for use cases like this, where you just want to have the same thing used in a bunch of various email templates that are kind of hard-coded in that template. Now you'll notice here, I have this click to remain a subscriber thing. So now that I'm using SparkLoop, I want to make sure that since I'm paying for traffic, if somebody comes over from a SparkLoop kind of partner, I make them actually manually verify that they want to get my emails, because otherwise I end up paying $3 for them. And a lot of those subscribers that I get referred aren't the highest quality. So by doing this, I can basically auto prune only SparkLoop paid referrals. But you'll notice this little box I have up here. This is only being shown on my newsletters. So specifically my evergreen newsletters. So I don't want this, like doesn't need to be a widget right now because it's only ever used in this email. So I didn't bother making it a widget. Now I could later on go and there's this little icon here that says turn this container into a new widget. If I ever decide, oh, I want to use this in multiple email templates, I click one thing, give it a name, and now this is a widget. So my thinking usually is I'm going to start, if I only ever am going to use it to my knowledge in one place, I won't bother making it a widget if it's going to be included in the email template. But once I have multiple email templates that all need that, then I think, okay, maybe it's time to actually extract this into a widget. And again, I'll get more into this as we get more into Palladio. Another use case, yeah.
Is there a way to go the other way? So I have a widget, I might not need it, but I want to make it as part of the template and not make it a widget. Is there a reverse button for this?
There's not.
There's not.
There's
Okay.
not yet. But
Okay.
you could, I mean, you could just embed it in the template and just technically it would be a widget, but yeah, there's no way to reverse that, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So the other use case for widgets would be repeating the same structured content in an individual email. So if you've seen when I send out emails, let me grab one real quick. Oops, wrong one. Wrong app. So when I send out a broadcast email, like this one, and you look at the actual content, you'll notice that I have, I didn't do it in this email because this is a short email. I apologize. This one. So one thing I do with my longer emails is I weave in these, I forgot to do it in this one too. So unfortunately, because this is a manual thing, I don't always remember to do it. But you'll probably, if you've been on my list for a while, you'll know that I have these little mini inline call to action type things. Let's see if this one has it. I always forget to do it here. I apologize for the hiccup here. I definitely do them in my evergreen newsletter. So let me just grab one of those. It's a bit embarrassing. Okay. So these little guys, right? So this is a inline call to action where I just drop the widget in. I'm not actually passing any dynamic data into it. It's actually pulling the dynamic data out of the individual's offer funnel, which is a completely different topic. But basically all I need to do is I just drop this widget in and say, okay, I've written a few paragraphs. I'm like, 30% of the way down the email. Let's drop this in. And then I just drop that in and it shows a very nice inline contextual promo basically for that person. And later on, I do the same thing here. So this is a really good use case of widgets where I'm not actually passing in anything dynamic. They're not changing each time I do it, but it's the same structure with all, in this case, the same dynamic content, but it doesn't need to be the same dynamic content included again and again. And that's kind of the traditional use case of content snippets where you have like the same info in a snippet being shoved in an email again and again. But the most or the most common, I should say, use case for widgets is this final bullet point, which is using a widget multiple times in an email. With each time you use that widget, you end up leveraging different data. So that example I gave of like 10 testimonials, each one having different data, that's kind of the quintessential reason for using widgets. And that's why I built them the way I did. So I'm going to get really geeky for a second, and then we'll get into actually, I'm going to show you my Palladio setup, and we'll talk about widgets actually in practice. So the way they technically work, because some people have asked, is that when you design a widget in Palladio, think of it as like a little mini template, right? So this mini template is going to have, it could just be static, but you could also put in meta variables that are dynamic placements within that widget. So what ends up happening is when you add that, when you click add to ConvertKit and it gives you a bunch of stuff, it's basically turning all that visual stuff you did into a combination of HTML, CSS, and Liquid that's all optimized for email clients. Then that whole thing is wrapped with a temporary Liquid variable. that it's effectively a throwaway use once liquid variable, that when you include the widget in an email or an email template, it reads from that variable. So what's interesting is I'm actually using the normal content snippet code that ConvertKit gives you, but I'm actually ignoring it. I use it to grab the stuff I need. But the problem with, and many of you I know have seen this with content snippets in ConvertKit, is it adds this annoying white space above and below it, which doesn't always look right. So, you know, if you're trying to do like inline text or something, you want to put some stuff in a paragraph, content snippets just are annoying based on how they're built. So what is technically being done is the snippet itself is getting this code wrapped around it. And then it still gets that line break stuff. But then when the snippet's included, all that's discarded and just that variable is used. And then that variable is then embedded. So that fixes this whole stupid content snippet problem. So that's one thing that I architected into how this works. And a widget can also be loaded up with default content. So in the event, let's say you want to have like a default image show, if when using a widget, you don't actually pass in an image, you can also set that up too with a meta variable. So the widget itself, it's the code that gets created. It says, hey, if this is undefined, then define it with this default image. So what technically is happening when you embed a widget in an email and you click the use an email button and it gives you that block of code, is it's setting any widget content. So any of the dynamic content is being set. So if you say, hey, here's the picture, here's the headline, here's the content, those three variables end up getting set. And then the underlying content snippet is called and included, but thrown away. And then the final liquid variable that has all this stuff I just talked about is then processed with the dynamic content. And then that it's one of these things that ConvertKit should have this as a proper first class thing, but they don't. So this is like my elaborate hack that makes it work and gives us all really nice, consistently structured emails that have dynamic content within them. Okay, I know that was a bit of a ramble, so I'm going to ditch Keynote now and go to sharing my screen. But hopefully that made some sense at least. Okay, so let's talk now about actual widgets. So I'm going to show you the widgets that I have set up in my ConvertKit or my Palladio account for Create and Sell. So I have two templates, right? I have two email templates, which you've probably seen. This is the usual newsletter one that I use, where it's more of an article. Oh yeah, I'll make my screen larger. Yes, good call. Is that better, Shlomo? Okay, so this is the one I usually use, which is the, I have the little intro area, I have the kind of table of contents, and then I have the actual content and all that other stuff. And then I have another one that's more of a plain one, which tomorrow's newsletter is going to be with this template too. And this is when I just have like a thing I want to say that's not really a proper article per se. So these are the two templates I use. And then the email widgets the widgets that I've set up, I've got quite a bit. So the main one is this photo frame. And you've probably seen this when, I might have an email that has like two images side by side, or I just have the image centered. The way that when you add an image in ConvertKit, you can't do like what you see on screen here. So what I ended up doing is I basically created this widget that has three styles. So a centered style, a two up one, which is like the left image is higher than the right image, and then the opposite, which is a 2 up 2. So when I'm going in and I'm actually adding in an email, one of these, I just decide, do I want it to be one image that's centered or these 2 up things? And this is an example of a widget that has one photo or 2 photos as meta variables, and then the style or the theme, if you will, that I'm using. So this is what I use all the time. Every image you see of mine uses this widget. I'm not actually using the native ConvertKit image embeds. So that's one widget that I have set up. Let me quickly show you this one since we looked at this before. So this is the reader question. So if I want to have an email that I start off saying, hey, Shlomo wrote it and said, blah, 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 blah. You could just do the thing where you just add that as like italicized text, but I wanted to make it stand out a bit. I wanted to be able to put, his or her picture at the top and so on and so forth. So I designed this widget that has 3 meta variables. So it has the question header. You can see I have the default values here. So I'm always passing in and overwriting these. Otherwise, there'd be like lorem ipsum added or a question from John Doe added. So I make sure that when I use these, I definitely put in, the three bits of data that I need in order to make this work. So the question header, the question itself, and the question image. And then this spits out a really nice little widget. So when using this, all I need to do is when I'm writing an email, let's say I'm creating a new email. Let me just do this real quick. So I'm going to create an email. Let's use the foundations template right here. So let's say I want to put in a reader question. All I would need to do here is click use an email, put the header like question from Andrew Brunetti. I'm going to pick on you, Andrew. Content snippet, white spacing is annoying. It really is. I'm not going to put an image here. It'll just use default. But you can see that's what it would look like. And then you can remember how I mentioned what we're doing is we're setting dynamic content. So we're setting here the question header. We're setting the question. We're then actually calling that content snippet here, right? So snippet.widget reader question. And then I'm looking to see if there's any output. And if there is, I'm embedding the output. So you don't need to worry about this. Palladio writes all this stuff for you. But then when I'm sending the email now, I just go here, I paste that in, click preview. And now I've got this nice little reader question widget that I've added here. So that's that's my approach to doing this. One thing you can do if you find yourself not wanting to keep going back into Palladio and clicking use in email again and again is you could also, I'm using a tool called Raycast that has snippets. So you can see here, let me actually show this to you. So I have this CS photo snippet here. That's basically my photo frame, that widget that first widget I showed you, the centered one. So if what my workflow is, let's say I want to put a picture in. I'll grab the picture like this one, and it's going to default. This is the ConvertKit default way of putting it in, right? All I need to do is right click on it, copy the image URL, and then type in CS photo. And then there's all of my widget code with the image that I just put on my clipboard, put in there. So now I can just delete that image from ConvertKit. And now it looks like it's in this nice little shadowed box with the rounded corners and the little outline and all that stuff. So that's another example of how you can use stuff like Text Expander or any of these different tools that do basically the same thing to be able to kind of load in if you're okay with looking at the final widget code, load it into a tool like Text Expander, and then put in like the placeholder stuff that it lets you set up. And then you can just rapid fire, like great use case for that is the headings. So if you do these highlighted headings, you don't want to keep going back into Palladio every time you want to put a highlighter effect. So you can use something like Text Expander to do exactly that. Cool. All right. So I'm trying to think what else I can, like, how many of you how many of you here actually use widgets? I'm just curious to know, like, I don't know how basic I need to get with what I'm covering. I'm happy to go as basic as I need to get. I just want to make sure that I have an idea of kind of the what people are already doing. Cool. Okay. So hopefully does the idea of like what a widget is and how it works and everything kind of makes sense? Like I know Shlomo, for instance, you and I have been talking back and forth over the months about like some of the issues you ran into with widgets and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that this kind of like, I know it's a lot of weird stuff that is really just set up to overcome crappy defaults of ConvertKit. But hopefully like what you're seeing here is kind of making a bit of sense.
It does. The interesting thing is that I always had in mind that a widget, well, should be part of a template, and you're not using that at all. You're basically just copying the code every time. At least the last example you've shown.
Yeah.
Which is an easier use case. Maybe that's why I have always these problems of changing things and then missing this piece of code in Palladio, and then you know, all that. And I'm still not completely over this, but I'm much better now.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like I mentioned the only real use case for ever using a widget in a email template is to make it so if that widget needs to be, if that same content should be shared across multiple email templates. But the usual use case would be you're writing an email, you have like rich text, you're, you know, typing, and you're thinking, I want to put in a big, nice, pretty testimonial right now, right? You do that, you add the testimonial widget, and then you go back. Like, so for example, here, we have the photo frame. I put some text above it. This is my newsletter, blah, 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 text. And then I'm like, oh, I want to put in a highlighter. You know, I want to highlight some content now. So I go over to the highlighter. I click use an email. I say, this is some highlighted content. I tell it it's an H2, which is a headline 2. And then I just copy this, go back to my email and say, paste that in. Click no, always click no. One thing to note, ConvertKit has this annoying thing where when you go to paste, it's going to say like, it looks like you're using Markdown. Well, no. So always click no here. And then, you know, I put that in, I go back to writing, blah, 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 blah. And now when you click preview, you're going to see here, we've got, you know, a combination of just the normal like text in ConvertKit with a widget, the highlighter widget, and the photo frame widget, and so on. So that's the normal use case. That's how I use it, where I have an email and I want to have a lot of kind of like dynamic blocks, just like if you're reading like I think of it like a magazine. Very few magazines are just raw text. Instead, they'll have like a little call out box, or they'll have like a little imagey rotated thing or something. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish with this, is to be able to bring some like, go beyond just rich text formatting and have, you know, weave naturally into your email content, things like this that make sense for you.
So I've used, I need to relook how I implemented this. One of your dynamic content snippets inside a template, the one that does the right salutation and randoms between them, and kind of clean up the names.
Yeah, the greeting one.
Yeah, the greeting one.
Yeah,
and it does have some funky look on when I have the newsletter. I'm not sure yet how to fix it, but I don't remember how I implemented it, so I can't.
Okay.
We'd have to go back to this later. But I guess this is a different use case because it's not really a widget from Palladio. It's something that is, it's a content snippet.
It kind of is. I mean, technically it's still a widget, even though it's just a content snippet with, but if you have, it depends on what version of that code you have. Because if you have it before I did it now, the way I'm doing it in Palladio, it would have just been raw liquid shoved into a content snippet, which would have then had that same white space issue. But if you do it with the new thing that's in the widget gallery in Palladio, if you replace it with that, it should work better that way.
So I should replace because I have that white space.
Yeah,
that's probably the problem. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably it too. And one thing I want to note too, on that note, so one of my widgets is called Offer Funnel, and it is empty. When you look at it, it is a lot of liquid code that I hand wrote. And what this is doing, this is all the stuff that my little recommendation engine that I basically have at the bottom of my emails is using. And the reason I did it in this is I want to be able to say, I use this across a lot of different email templates. And I want to be able to go in here and be able to say, hey, I've got you can see this is where I put all of my, like, here's my promo number 1 for mastering ConvertKit. And this is promo number 2, which is a variation of that. So I'm able to here basically put all of my different things in one place, like share my newsletter. What should I write about next week? All that stuff is here. And then this, all I need to do is if I change this, let's say I change this to next month or something, not that I would, but if I did, I just make that change. I click this button, and then I just copy all this stuff that it gave me into and update the offer widget in the content snippets. And then everything just magically changes. So what I love about this is that if I want to change something in my product lineup, I add a new thing, like I'm working on Create and Sell Pro. When I add that to this, I just update this one thing, and then all that like recommendation things, those inline call to actions I showed you a minute ago, all of that it just works. So that's one of my reasons why I love this infrastructure, is that this widget is not a usual widget. There's nothing structural about it. All it's doing is looking at subscriber data and saying, hey, they've bought this, they haven't bought that, they should buy this, and then crunching all that and randomizing it a bit. And then it then exposes all that data to the remaining template so that the other widgets can then pull that in, if that makes sense. So I know that's kind of like way higher level than I think most people are at right now, but that's the kind of stuff that, end goal, you can use widgets to like create a personal recommendation engine for your products and stuff. And that's, that's where I think this stuff gets frankly really exciting, but yeah. Justin, I think the image which I think I added as let me check real quick. I think I added photo frame recently as a option. I might not have. No, I didn't, but I'm going to show you the magic of Palladio. So I'm going to click include in gallery. And now it's in there. So if you click new widget, there's photo frame down there. So it's live now. So hopefully that helps. Yep. So Daniel, you asked about you don't create snippets out of your widgets. So I do. So if you haven't, so let me, okay, so you mentioned Kevin, that's I do in Master and ConvertKit, but I'm actually with the new updates I'm making in Master and ConvertKit, I'm completely overhauling like how I teach that. But yeah, it is something I might do kind of as a side thing too, just on its own. Because I know a lot of people want to like, especially if you have multiple products, the idea of a recommendation engine is big. And especially if Palladio can do a lot of the annoying coding work to make it happen. Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. I want to show you really quickly creating one from scratch, because Daniel, you bring up a good point about you had a hard time building one from scratch. So I want to show you kind of the complete life cycle of, hey, I want to create a new widget. How does that work? So I'm going to click new widget. I'm going to do a blank one, just so we're not cheating. So I'm going to call this demo widget. I'm going to click create. So by default, it's going to give you one meta variable called description, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is let's add a container up here, and then I'm going to put this block of text in that container. I'm going to do a little styling, not much, but let's make this like a pink container with a shadow or something like that. And then we'll throw in a picture too. So we have description, and then we have a picture. So what we want to do is we want to make, I'll leave this as is, but we want to make this picture dynamic. So to do that, I'm going to click on my meta variables tab. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to call this demo image. I'm going to say that this is an image. And let's just grab for now a default of this one. And I'm going to save this. So if I go back to this image, one thing I need to do now is I need to tie it to that new meta variable I set up. So up here where it says source image, you'll see this little filter icon. I'm going to click that and choose demo image. And this is going to tie that image structure to that dynamic content, that slot called demo image. So when we preview this, this is what it'll look like. And obviously the blank slate text and the image itself will change. So that's what I need to do to create one. So this is a very simple example. But what I need to do next is I need to get it into ConvertKit. So I'm going to click Add to ConvertKit. It's going to give me this code that it just created for me. I don't need to worry about it. Just know it's there. I'm going to click this blue button. It walks me through it, but I'm just going to show you. I already know what to do, so I'm going to show you what to do. So we're going to go to in ConvertKit, go to Send, go to your snippets page. I'm going to create a new snippet called Demo Widget. And this is where it would be really nice if ConvertKit had a snippet API, but they don't. So right now it's unfortunately a manual thing. But go into your content area, choose HTML block, edit, and just paste blindly what Palladio gave you, and click Save. I know that's annoying. I'm really trying to get the ConvertKit team to build out a API things that you can just in Palladio click a publish button and it just zaps it up to ConvertKit for you. But yeah, they don't seem too interested in doing that. Okay, so you see it added, it called it snippet.demo-widget. Well, now I need to tell Palladio about that. So if I go back to Palladio, I'm going to say that it's now called demo-widget and then click Save. So now we have this in our in my ConvertKit setup. So now let's use it in this email that I started creating. So I'm going to go to back to the widget, click Use an Email, type in a description, say, hey, let's pick an image. We will choose the elephants, insert, click Next. Why doesn't it want me to use that? Oh, it's an MP4. Never mind. Yes, the demo Cloudinary gives you videos. Let's do the cat. So there's our little cat. And now I just copy this because again, it's already added the demo widget snippet. We've already done that. We've already added it to ConvertKit, so this will work fine. I click the blue button. And now over my email, let's maybe put it by the top. I just paste it in, click preview. And there is my new widget that I just designed with the cat and the dynamic, hey. So does that kind of make sense? What I know I went a bit quick, but this is being recorded for that reason. But does that make sense how I just, I created a new widget. I said, this is what I want dynamic. And then I used it, or I added it to ConvertKit. That's a one-off thing. So I don't need to add it to ConvertKit ever again, unless I change like the background color or change something about the structure. I can keep reusing this again and again in all of my future emails without needing to add it to ConvertKit. All I need to do is just use an email flow and choose what picture of a cat I want to use this time and what text I want to use this time. And that's it. Does that make some sense? Specifically, I think Daniel here, because I think you were running into that. Yeah, Andrew, this will actually work in Drip too. So shouldn't be any reason why this wouldn't work in Drip. There is some code I have that says like, if you set up the integration as Drip, it'll use like it's snippet instead of snippets or something. But yeah, Daniel, so to follow up, you said you're always creating snippets from your widgets. So yeah, with the widget, when I set up a widget, when I create a new widget from scratch, I import it once into ConvertKit. And then obviously if I make changes to that widget in Palladio for ConvertKit needs to be updated in order for that change to stick. But then the standard workflow is the use an email flow. So again, if say it's next week and I need to do it again, I change the text here, choose another image. And again, it just kind of works because what it's going to do at the end is it compiles all this liquid where it's setting that description I just put in, setting the demo image, and then calling that one-off content snippet that I put in there. Now, like I showed you before with Text Expander, if you want to say, hey, I'm going to load this into Text Expander, but then I'm going to set up a variable because I see that this is the image. You can set it up that way and say, hey, like, I don't know much about Text Expander. Like I said, I use Raycast, but Raycast, one limitation of that is you can only go off your clipboard. So I can only have one thing, one bit of dynamic data, which makes sense for that photo frame, but wouldn't make sense here because I have 2 bits of dynamic data. But I think with like Typeform, you can actually set it up to say, I have like the headline and the description or something. And then when you invoke the Typeform or text expander, not Typeform, the text expander command for like your, demo widget, it'll pop up and say, hey, what's the headline or what's the description? And then it can populate it into this preset liquid template that Palladio gives you and stick it in. I mean, in a perfect world, if I had unlimited time and resources, I would build like a native like Mac app or something, or a Chrome extension that would basically do this. So if you're in ConvertKit, you say like, backslash like Notion style backslash demo widget, and then say, cool, what do you want the description image to be? Type it in, and then it would just stick it right into ConvertKit. But yeah, I don't have that time. So that's right now you're either going back into Convert or into Palladio and using the use and email flow, or find a way to put this into like a text expander type tool, and doing it that way.
Yeah, Brandon, that was super helpful. Thank you so much. I think it just helps seeing the workflow a couple of times.
Yeah.
Just seeing where you're editing, where you're copying, where you're pasting, and just doing it. I think it's going to make it a lot easier.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I know it takes, it's not the easiest thing to figure out. And I'm trying my best to figure out how to best document and teach this, which is why I wanted to do this tonight's workshop too, is just to try to see where people are stuck and stuff like that. So I'm glad to hear that though. So thanks, Daniel. Yeah, can you show how widget content can change based on, yeah, I've got so Andrew, I just hired a video editor, and my goal now is, that's always been my blocker, is like, I could either do just stupid me recording my screen or have some degree of editing. And so Brooke just started, and she's went to film school, and she's going to use her pricey film degree on my tutorial videos, which is fine. So yeah, Shlomo, let me show you how you can use a widget to change based on subscriber data. Yeah, so let's say we want to put the subscriber's name in this, right? Or email, because we don't always have a name. I'm going to put a paragraph thing up. I'll put it down here. And then up here, we could put hello subscriber.email address, 2 curly brackets. And obviously when I preview this, oh, actually, I already have a test person. So I actually have a bunch of test people here. So the way previewing works is what you'll want to do is when you integrate your Palladio account into your ConvertKit account, it'll then let you go over here, and you can just basically put in, should remove that, shouldn't I? Go away. That's my one password. Sorry about that. There we go. You can just type it in the email address of any subscriber in your database, and it'll pull them in and render the widget as them. So like this person has bought Mastering ConvertKit. So what's cool is I can type in like, I'll put in me test. Shlomo, what's your email address again, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Just typing it in real quick. Can you put it in chat so I can copy and
Yeah,
paste?
of course.
Cool, thanks. I'll show you this in kind of real time, how this would work. Right. So I'm going to go in here, paste this in. And it's going to ask me a description for the subscriber. So I'm going to say like Palladio customer or something. So now here's you, and that's an example of now. And I could also do like, I don't know if I have your first name, and presumably I do. So I can do like this, right? And then when I preview that again, yeah, there it is. So that's an example of like how you can, just like with an email template, you can test the previewing of it against any subscriber in your database.
So that would not be something on the metadata. Cannot be.
No, because metadata is meant for passing it in from like the parent to the child. So like the email template or the email itself to the widget, but the subscriber is known by all of it. So your widgets know what the subscriber is. The email template knows what the subscriber is. That data is kind of global, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah, you can just call up subscriber dot whatever, wherever you want. The meta stuff is really just useful for if you need to pass in, like if you're writing an email and you say, I need to pass in, like I said, the like data about this testimonial in for the purposes of the widget, because that's not obviously being pulled from the subscriber. That's just being pulled from you, the author of the email, saying, I want to put in a quote from Bob or something.
Okay.
So yeah, you can use your normal ConvertKit liquid stuff that pulls from subscriber data within widgets.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool, no worries. So I want to use the rest of the time to answer any questions anyone might have about either what I've shown, if you want me to go deeper into anything, if you want me to slow down and kind of recover something that I kind of blew through. But I'm addicted to leveraging widgets in my own stuff. I've tried to model Palladio to be as simple as possible to use to make it so you can use widgets really effortlessly. But I think once you get the hang of it, once you see like what you can do with this stuff, I think it completely changes the way you write emails. Yeah. So again, I'm biased, but I'd love to hear any questions or feedback anyone has. I want to help.
I want to know more the advanced tab there, but I don't think it's related specifically to widgets.
Which advanced tab? I'm sorry.
Go back to Palladio.
Yep. I'll go into where I was in the demo one. Yeah.
So there is when you click on any of the yeah. So you have advanced.
Oh yeah. Okay.
These...
This is so the design tab gives you like the normal stuff you might want to do, like change the width, change the height, change the padding and stuff. But technically speaking, there's a lot of CSS properties that are included with every single element. So this is like web designer kind of level stuff. Most of this is only going to be useful if you are, for instance, a web designer. So like, for instance, here, let's say with this text block, I'm going to go to text transform and say uppercase. Now everything in it is uppercase. And that's done because this is just a CSS transformation, which again, this is all like, because there are some people who use Palladio who are like traditional kind of web designers who know CSS really well. So they're more comfortable saying, oh, I want to actually define my box shadow, or I want to define my margin this way instead of with the design tab. One thing though that you'll notice these little badges is this is because email clients don't always honor certain CSS properties. So like, for instance, the text transform one I just did, it says, what did it say? I think it said 100% safe. So that means every single email client will know what to do with text transform. But sometimes like text shadow, not everyone will. So if you click on that, it'll say you can do text shadow, but it's not going to work in Gmail. And it's not going to work in Outlook, except Outlook on Mac OS. So it basically lets you see like, okay, so it'll work on like a lot of this like, hey, fast mail, blah, 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 blah stuff. But if you have a lot of people on Gmail on your list, or you have a lot of people who use Outlook, you can put the text shadow, but they're not going to see it. So that's why I've put these little badges here. And that is pulled from this Can I Email website, which just looks at every single CSS property possible and says, what support does email clients have for this? So when
But all the properties on the regular one are 100% safe, or we should watch this as well?
The stuff on design is safe. Because the
Everything
stuff
there is
on
safe.
design, I actually have some fallbacks that are kind of under the hood that like, if you try to do a certain thing, it'll do it, but then it'll have a fallback option. So if it's like in Gmail, which doesn't always do stuff correctly, it'll fall back to that. But if you just do it in advanced, there's no guarantee. But again, some people really want to be able to say, I want to have a border image or something, which obviously won't work in emails. right, that's Siri. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. The
Yeah.
simple thing is like, unless you're a web designer, you don't need to bother with the advanced tab. Cool. Okay, so Kevin asks, curious if we could make widgets for audio files if we're going to add audio essays. Yeah, so audio and video can't be actually embedded in an email. Anytime you want to embed a video in an email, it's really just an image that links to the video. Like I think what happens if you paste in ConvertKit like a YouTube URL, it just basically makes an animated GIF of the video and includes that and then links to the YouTube. So yeah, same with audio. There's a podcast player widget, Kevin, in the widget gallery that, again, you can't actually play it. But it will it'll just link to like the permalink page of the podcast episode in question and stuff. Now there are some things I'll throw a bone in case anyone watching this is wanting to shout out saying you're wrong, Brennan. There's things like AMP is a technology pioneered by Google, which is trying to make it so you can have more kind of non or elements that are not stuck in the 90s in email. Because the problem with email is it can't run JavaScript. It can't run, it can't embed, like native email usually can't do a lot. It's very stuck in like the mid 1990s, which is one of the big troubles I think with building Palladio. I've realized is like how hard it is to make that work. But technologies like AMP are trying to bring in more dynamic, more modern things in email, but it's not pervasive yet. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But Palladio can't even support that anyway. So again, don't even need to think about it, to be honest, at this point. Yeah, podcast widget. Check it out. What else? Anything else? Yeah, no worries. And I'd also like this time, if you don't have a question, I'd love to know, I'm trying to do at least 2 of these a month. So if you have any suggestions for the next one, I'd like to get more, I've been covering, like last time it was about kind of like creating a newsletter template from scratch. This time it was about widgets. If you see anything, like if you want me to go deeper into even things like this, where like this partner greeting that I'm using for when SparkLoop partners send me subscribers, I show this in my welcome sequence that will like call out who sent them and what I know about them and all that stuff using a bunch of meta variables. You can see here, all I need to do, which is another reason I love this, is every time I get a new partner, I just load them in here and I put their name, I put their SparkLoop ID, and I put like some context about how I know them. Like, hey, I met Darren at CEX conference, blah, 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 blah. So what's really nice is when I get a new partner, I just go in here, I update this list, and then I just pop this back into update the content snippet in ConvertKit. And that way, when a partner sends serious traffic, like say Justin Welsh is now sending me stuff, I just add him here. And then now when he sends me traffic, automatically it's going to say, what does it say? It says something like, thanks for joining Small Ask. You're now subscribed to Create and Sell because you also subscribe to Justin or SparkLoop's email newsletter or whoever, and they recommended my newsletter to you, blah, 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 blah. And then I link them to my segmentation survey. So this is really cool. And I can go deeper into stuff like this. I'm happy to, ideally this is going to be centered on Palladio, so I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole of like email marketing in general. But for this workshop series, I just want to show you like some of the things that I've done that others are doing. So like people like Jay Klaus, Justin Moore is doing some ridiculous stuff with Palladio. I'd love to bring them in, maybe do like a joint thing where we look at like, how does Justin Moore do his email stuff? I don't know if you've seen his emails, but he, let me find one of the new ones. So this is all done with Palladio. And you can see here, he's got, my images aren't loading. What he has is like, he's using widgets to do these like job ads or these sponsorship things. This like thing that if you're not part of his, if you haven't referred traffic to him, he puts this in, otherwise he shows other content. And he's gone all out with this stuff. So like I could, he's already said, if I ever want him to come on and do like a joint thing, I'd love to have him show you his process that him and his team use. So if that sounds good, I'd be happy to maybe see if he'd want to do that next time. But yeah, I want to showcase what people are doing with the product, what creative use cases they found to use Palladio, and a lot more. Cool. Okay. Well, it sounds like Justin's going to get an email. I do, Daniel, if you go to YouTube and type in Palladio email marketing, the last video uploaded was the webinar from last time.
Brennan, I have a more general question here.
Yeah.
So in terms of the personalization that you do, and you got all the data that we're pulling from the database, and sometimes with the text, some sentences doesn't make sense when you are adjusting them. So I've went in and put the code into ChatGPT and kind of give me all the options when it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Unfortunately, ChatGPT's prompts are too short to run that. So I got stuck there to make sure that it works.
Can I show you something?
So I wonder how you handle this.
So check this out. So speaking of ChatGPT, given the following industries: legal, architecture, construction, web agency, and general business, create variations of this headline. So I took my wife's client portal, her headline on her page. It spit out these 6. And then I said, output these results as a JavaScript object, which again, technical stuff. So now it did this for me. And then I said, for each of the variations you created, create a sub variation that targets the following job roles: business owner, project manager, and general employee. And then it did this for me, which is for legal, here it is targeting this, here it is targeting that. And then here's the money shot. Now transform the JavaScript object into liquid conditionals. So then here's everything there, which is, depending on it. So you'd replace industry, the legal here, with subscriber.industry or whatever, job role with subscriber.job role or whatever you're using internally. And then here it all is here. And then actually I said, for the above liquid code, minify it and remove any extraneous white space. So then I could just copy this. It's all in line. It's not a mess of liquid, and just stick this in an email wherever I want it. So I've been looking at some of the ways that I could use, because, it's one thing coming up with all these, what is this, 18 variations of headlines, but it's another writing all this stupid liquid for it. So, I've wanted to build into Palladio something that would do this, but I'm thinking I might just tell people to do it this way.
So I had the code. And then I told ChatGPT, give me a case that it's not going to work. And it kept just running into a wall because the prompt was too short. So you're going the other way. You're first letting it build it, and then
yeah.
You
the first was
the code.
Give it a headline, give me 6 a bunch of variations based on industry, and then based on those variations you gave me, drill deeper and give me variations for job role. That yielded then 18 combinations, which are down here. And then it was this easy to say, now transform the above JavaScript object. And I had to detail how to do this. So I think knowing what to give prompt stuff is really most.
But you could have asked Liquid directly. Why did you ask JavaScript here?
Because I needed the object. I needed what it was working off of to look like this. And it could have been, I could have said, do it as a, I don't know, YAML or some other format, but I'm comfortable with JavaScript. So I said, do it in this nested format and then turn this into that. And why I'm interested in this is because this is what I want to eventually do, code into something like Write Message. We have a personalization editor thing, right? And I want to be able to say, if you're tracking all these questions being answered, how can we hook up to the ChatGPT API and create maybe some personalized headlines that are automatically outputted, which you can obviously modify and tweak and stuff. But yeah, so I was really happy about this. This is cool to build or cool to try.
Okay. Thank you for sharing this.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so I need to get going, but hopefully this is really fun and helpful. I'm gonna reach out to Justin and try to get him on for next time. This was recorded, so I'll be uploading it to YouTube and then emailing it out to everyone who joined. If you're subscribed to my YouTube channel for Palladio email marketing, it'll probably get notified sooner because it'll ding you once it's uploaded. But yeah, I really enjoy this. Hopefully I didn't go too quick, too technical, but yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I really do enjoy hosting. So hopefully it was worth it for everyone. I will keep you updated on the creator wizard himself. Okay, cool. Well, thanks everyone. I'll talk to you next time. See ya. Bye-bye.